Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of When Worlds Collide. This is Jerk.
Oh, this is Sonia. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
I'm here.
So, we want to thank you for listening to another episode. If you made it this far in our podcast, we want to, I personally want to just apologize for, we're definitely trying to figuring stuff out as we go with technology and stuff like that. But, the more episodes we do, the better we're going to get. But besides that, how are you doing, Sonia?
I am good. I've been boxing up our house, getting ready to move. It's a lot of work.
Right. You got 3 weeks till you move?
I think we're down to 2 now.
Down to 2?
It's like the closer I get, the more fire I get under my butt.
Right. Usually the closer we get, the more anxiety I get.
Yeah, I don't like moving. You've moved a lot, probably more than me, but I don't like moving at all.
Yeah.
But this move's kind of exciting for Greg and I, so it's a new adventure in our lives and trying to find some joy and happiness in our retirement years. It'd be fun.
That's the goal.
Yep.
So this episode is going to be all about me and my backstory. Yay. So basically, I'm going to start off and with the last episode, I disclosed a lot of information about my childhood, so I'm going to kind of just skip over that and get to the juicy stuff. So basically, I grew up in Maryville in the mid '80s, early '90s, and Maryville, for as long as I've always been there, has always been a really bad neighborhood. It's always kind of been overran by gangs and drugs and.
I don't know what happened to it because I grew up in Maryville right down the street from you in the 60s and 70s. And I think towards the end of 70s, I could see that was happening. But yeah, it was a great neighborhood at one time. It really was.
All right. I kind of didn't know it was a bad neighborhood until so the first time I'd seen a dead body. And that was, I believe, around fourth grade, I believe.
In Maryville?
Yeah. And basically, so I went to John F. Long, and I used to, I lived on 55th Avenue, so every morning I'd walk to school, and one morning I remember it was wintertime because it was freezing cold. We were walking down 55th Avenue, and right past Highland, there was a car parked in the alley, and the car was still on and everything. And I remember as we walked up to it, we'd seen the fog from the exhaust was, because it was super cold outside. So it was going everywhere. And, the closer we got, the more we realized something was going on. And we walked up to the window, and the dude's, his brains were just blew out all over the inside of the car.
Gosh.
And
how did you handle that as a fourth grader?
To be honest, it didn't really bother me until later. I mean, I think that was the first time I knew we were in a really bad area. And I mean, I'd seen stuff before that, but that was like the pivotal moment where I realized that, there's a lot of stuff going on in this neighborhood. And, because growing up there, you'd see cops and raids all the time and drug addicts and shootouts, all over the place. And it was always on the news, that area. And Maryville is not really big. It's a few miles by a few mile radius, but, the amount of drugs and gangs kind of shoved into that little area is crazy.
I wonder what happened. 1 decade, man. It didn't seem like that when I was there, but yeah, I know it's that way now, and I know it's been that way for a long, long time.
Well, I think it was really towards the beginning of the 80s, because that's when like drugs were real, starting to get really bad, like crack era came and stuff like that. But when I was real young, I was really into skateboarding and stuff like that, and that's when I started realizing I would skateboard all over the place, and that's when I'd start really seeing graffiti everywhere. Anytime we take the bus, I'd start seeing, you'd see graffiti all over the place, and that's when I really started kind of paying attention to it. And I'd go to the skate park, Desert West Skate Park, which at the time I believe it was called something else. I could be wrong, but and I started seeing graffiti there, and I think that's when I kind of realized also that graffiti wasn't just one type of person. Because I think growing up, I'd see graffiti and I kind of just brush it off as like, oh, it's it's kind of a gang thing or something like that, and the only time we'd really pay attention to graffiti in our neighborhood was if we would see our neighborhood, which was tagged up all over the place, but if it was crossed out and it had another neighborhood, we knew that something was going on, and kind of stay away from main streets and stuff like that, because that's kind of when area or neighborhoods are going at war with each other. Right. They come in and they whack our neighborhood out and they put their neighborhood, and then we go, people from our neighborhood go over there and do the same thing. And
so it's super territorial.
Right. And when I started I would notice graffiti, and I started kind of doodling around in like black books and stuff like that. And I went for a couple years before I'd actually like decided that's okay. This is what I want to do. I'm going to take this full time and stuff like that. But I kind of figured that I wanted to use graffiti to steer away from, gang activity and stuff like that in the beginning. Even though that later in my life, it would kind of go that route regardless, but that's, for a different episode. But I remember everywhere I'd go, there'd be graffiti, and I would start being infatuated with it, and I'd start really getting into it. And I was doing it privately for a couple years before I really jumped off the porch. And jumping off the porch is basically just a term for when you're going outside your neighborhood, you're actually doing it, you're, doing it full time. You want your name to be recognized everywhere, not just...
The risk factor comes into play there where you're
right.
Yeah, put yourself out there.
Yeah, because, I spent years as just like an observer first, because I didn't want my debut to be like, some, whack toy, which is a term that, when you're not so good and stuff like that. But so I spent that, first couple years coming up with like a letter structure and focusing on watching other people and how they structure letters and stuff like that, and coming up with good names. Names are somewhat important in graffiti, because that's what you're judged on. It's what describes you. It's your persona in the streets. And sometimes you get these names that, that describe you, and you're given this name and stuff like that. Or sometimes you just pick random letters out of the dictionary, or a random word out of the dictionary, and that's your name. And sometimes people stick with that for years, and you ask them, like, how'd you get your name? And dude's like, oh, I flipped through the dictionary to page 271 and I put my finger on it, and that's how I got it. And I'm like, oh, that's cool.
I waited a lot of years to find out what Ronnie's name first came from, and then I find out it's not any big romantic story. It's just he was a first baseman in baseball. So it's just like whatever. So that's interesting, because I'm fascinated with names. I really am, because they're really interesting sometimes when you look at them. And
in reality, that does have a story behind it. It's not just some random word that he picked out of a dictionary, or he's seen on a park bench or something. It's right. Actually had some relevance to him.
Right.
So when I was real young, I went through a couple different names, but I remember like the first real one that I had gotten kind of decently big with was Orbit. And the reason why I picked that name is, as a kid, I was always kind of a big fan of like science shows, and in my house, they'd always watch that show Nova all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember one time they were talking about like the orbital trajectory of, something or another. And I was like, Orbit. And I was like, okay, I'll try it out. And I don't think that one lasted very long. My second name, I remember going into high school, was Aeons. And it was spelled Aeons. And when I was a kid, there was a real famous anime, like a cartoon called Aeon Flux, and I was really into that for a while. And so I stuck with that for a while until I think like the second or third time I got caught, they'd start knocking on my door and they're like, hey, they'd show pictures of my mom. Like, we know he's still doing it. Like, this name's popping up everywhere. So, so finally later down the road, I think like, sometime into high school, I was given the name Jerk. And,
were you a jerk? Or like, I can't even imagine that. You're such a nice guy. It's killed me.
I've toned down a lot. There has been times where I would, I've always been known as a nice guy until you piss me off, and then I fly off the deep handle, and I usually I'll jump a few steps, instead of having an argument with you, I'll just blindside you and start punching you, and you have no idea why until afterwards. And that was kind of the issue. But, I didn't, I wasn't I guess I was trying to fit the name more. I don't ever think in my heart I was ever like a big jerk. You know what I mean? I knew that I had, especially in graffiti and stuff like that. You can't get walked over, and you can't let people walk over you or anything like that, or they just keep doing it. And then you get this reputation for it and stuff like that. So, the first few times I would go absolutely, ape shit on someone. And then I've only had to do that a few times, because after that, the reputation of that kind of precedes you and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So, and for a long time, I spelled it normal with a J. And usually with graffiti, people will start changing the way they spell it just to get more options. With Ronnie, he'd spell it first as in, FERST, FIRST, 1ST, PHERST. The more options you got, the better.
He used them all too. Different eras of his life. Yeah.
Right. And so that's when I started dabbling in spelling with a G. And then,
it just makes it more interesting, I think, when you do that. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. The reason why I full-time changed to that spelling because there is a really old school writer from LA named Jerk, and it's a woman, and she's amazing. She's super talented, and she's by far the super OG with that name. And I couldn't deny that.
Yeah.
She's been writing that name since the mid 90s and stuff. So I can't argue with it about it. So instead of trying to fight for this, oh, which jerk is it? I'm I'm just going to spell it differently. And that way, there's a clear indication of who it is and stuff like that. But a lot of times I get people, when they see my name over and over and over and they first meet me, they call me Gurk. And for the longest time, I would kind of get kind of peeved about it. I'm like, oh, come on. And they're like, well, that's how it's spelled. And I'm like, no, because then, if you look at the words germs, genocide, geriatric, I used to have this whole list where I'd tell people phonetically GER still makes a J sound. And it was this big argument every time. And now it doesn't bother me anymore. I could care less, but, but growing up, doing graffiti in the mid 90s and stuff like that, there was, the graffiti scene in Phoenix was, I think it was awesome. It's definitely not like it is today. I mean, today you get a lot of cool people. You got people that do league walls, and the skill has definitely evolved a lot more. But Phoenix graffiti in the 90s was just everywhere. Everywhere was super grilled, and
I hated it.
You couldn't you couldn't go anywhere without graffiti just absolutely everywhere, especially on the west side of Phoenix.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, oh man, there's so many people and crews that kind of shaped how I kind of how I picture Phoenix graffiti history being kind of shaped by. But a lot of the main guys were there's these guys Pry and Fuse and some the House File, Major, Depth, which Ronnie knew Depth. Boar's one of our friends. And back then, I didn't know I would eventually be in the same crew as Boar, but to me, by far, Boar is one of the most underrated, Phoenix graffiti writers in the history of Phoenix, because that dude kinged Phoenix. I mean, you couldn't.
I've seen his stuff. He's good.
Yeah, like for years and years and years, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing him. You could, see, you look up and see a billboard, and you look, go a mile down the road and see tags everywhere from, 2 or 3 nights later. And there's other guys like Busy and Echo. The Tempe Bronx crew was a big one back then. These guys out of Tempe that were really big in like breakdancing. House and File, those were also big guys with SUS. They were big into like breakdancing. And then in the 90s too, there was like breakdancing was kind of like a bigger thing too. But then you also had guys like Creep and Sake, where they're kind of more like on the the gangbang side of it, more like Tag Banger, Prowl, guys kind of in the middle like Keeper and Pez, 21 Rack, Risen. I have a couple friends that I'm friends with now that back then I'd look at, like Luz, Wise, Ander, and like Germs and Dare, and like these guys are, they were everywhere back then, and it was cool. Like these guys are like bona fide killers on the street, and they kind of shaped graffiti in the 90s, in my opinion. And I'm sure I missed a lot of names, and but I mean, those are just kind of the ones that I talked to Ander a couple days ago, and we were going through some names and stuff like that, and those are just the ones that stuck out the most to me.
How's he doing?
He's doing good. He's focusing on work, and he's doing his thug thizzle.
Yep.
But back then, when growing up as a kid doing graffiti, like it was like the sky was the limit and stuff like that, and there was kind of like a pinnacle point in Phoenix graffiti history that kind of opened my eyes, and it was the JK versus SUS battle. And graffiti battles. So back then, they don't do it very much anymore. But back then, like if you had problems with another crew or stuff like that, or you didn't like these people, you would challenge them to a graffiti battle. And it's like you can either go one of two ways. It's like you have like an all at once crew battle where you guys go piece for piece, and your crew or you would piece next to someone else, and then everyone else would judge it to see who's better, and the winner got bragging rights. Or you have like a crew battle, which it would last like usually it would last like a couple weeks or a month, and it was like, oh, whoever got up the most in certain areas or all over the city, or whoever got up the most is the winner, and the whole city gets to be the judge. And that was kind of like the coolest thing, because you don't have stuff like that anymore. So looking back, those are like little things that I do miss about it, because like the competitiveness and stuff like that. But that specific battle kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things, like especially rivalries in graffiti. Because before I had thought like, like, oh, we're, playing this cat and mouse game with the police, and that's all we got to worry about. Well, then you start factoring in, neighborhoods and, gangs and civilians that are, want to be a hero, and, and then now you factor in other crews and other people you have problems with, and it kind of made it more fun. At least to me, it raised the stakes a little bit. It just added that little, tidbit that made it a little bit more fun.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day, the police, like if you got caught, which they used to give you 2 options, and this only happened to me twice, but I've heard countless stories about this back in the day. But the police would give you 2 options before they'd radio in of whether they caught you or not. They tell you, like, look, you can either go to jail, spend the night in jail, end up doing probation, fines, or you can take an ass whooping and we'll let you go. And a lot of people, when they hear that, they're like, oh, what, like police brutality, blah blah blah. Well, to us, it's like, you know,
You'd
like
rather take that. I know.
yeah, I'd rather take that than being stuck with, fines and probation.
Getting into the system is no fun.
Right. And so the first time they gave me the option, I was like, I don't know, 14, 15, and the pair of cops that caught me, I ran from them, and one of the guy, I mean, these guys were like yoked up. These guys were like super cops, like
Yep.
they had no business being police officers. They should be,
Yep.
linebackers or something. But the first time they gave me that option, the bigger the two dudes was, he was already putting his gloves on, taking his belt off, getting ready to give it to me, and I'm like, I chickened out. I was like, oh no, take me to jail. Like, I am not gonna get it from this guy. Like, I made him fall, and he already felt like I made him look like an idiot for one.
So he's mad.
Yeah. So, I was like, you know what? Screw it. Just take me to jail. And the guy was like, are you sure? Like, usually everyone takes option two. Like, I'm like, no way. Like, I'm not taking an ass from that guy. And they're like, well, he's like, you're going to wish you took it. You're going to wish you took the other option when you're sitting in a jail cell and you're paying fines and you're on probation. And I'm like, I'm sure I will, but I don't want to take it from that guy right now. And sure shit. I mean, I ended up getting caught, and I went to the Maryville precinct at that time, which was at 67th and Encanto, right next to the skate park. And
Yep.
I sat there, and my mom was at work because she worked graveyards. So when I ended up calling her work to tell her to come pick me up, she's like, you're going to have to wait until I get off work, and which was at 6 a.m. And it was still like midnight. So I'm like, oh man, like. So the whole night I sat in there. They had me handcuffed to this plastic bench, and the whole time I was like, gosh, I just took the ass whooping. Like, I regretted it since the moment I got there. And so the next time they gave me that option, I took it right away, and and it was funny because I remember they're like, oh, you're gonna do it? I'm like, yeah. So they end up, the guy, and they wouldn't hit you in the face or anything. They just kind of rough you up and hit you in the stomach and the ribs and stuff like that. But the guys that got me that time, the other guy was recording the whole thing on this like old school VHS, home camcorder. So I know there's some cops sitting around with a bunch of recordings of people getting their butt whooped, over and over. But yeah,
They don't do that anymore, do they?
No. Shortly after that, actually, there was a news report, and I think the New Times kind of ratted him out about it. Someone went to him and told him, and so the next time, I remember I got caught, and I asked him, I was like, "There's no way you can just rough me up, yeah, just beat me, rough me up a little bit." And they're like, "No, we can't do that anymore. We got someone put a stop to that. So have fun sitting in jail." And I was like, "Ah, crap." But I mean, so even though, I'm sorry, you go
so
ahead.
hard to believe, but I mean, for the average person, my friends and people that are out there, it's probably going to be hard to believe, but it's not at all to me. Like, not at all. Ronnie's told me so many things that happen, and it's not me sitting here saying anything bad about police to do that at all. There are cops that aren't the best of cops. Back then, especially, there's probably a lot of reform going on now and stuff. But I also, looking at it as a mom that had a kid go through the system so many freaking times and really was in the juvenile system forever. I also can see why kids would rather take that road, because the system just is not there to help kids. It's not there. Once you're in the system, it's a money-making thing in my opinion, for the state. And because they just fine you, they put you in systems that they fund and get money. It's just a terrible situation. So I guess I can kind of laugh a little bit about the ass whooping, because I can see why that would happen.
Right. Well, I mean, there's plenty. I mean, I don't see why someone wouldn't believe it. I mean, there's plenty of movies and stuff like that where they put it in there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they get that idea from somewhere, and it's because that stuff really happens. It's not just And it's not
Well,
just Phoenix or not just, it's
no.
everywhere you do that,
Anybody in power, I don't care, any kind of leadership, powerful positions, there are bad people that take advantage of and it will always be that way. And there's no way, I don't care all the reform in the world that you do, it may get better, but you're going to still have those people. And Ronnie used to claim in the day when he sold marijuana that a lot of his clients were cops. And I didn't believe him. I'm like, you're so full of it. He just always used to kind of tell me that the cops were, this and that. And then he went to prison, and then I learned it was bad people in every type of leadership position that take advantage of those people that are under them. So anyway, well, that's cool. So you were really influenced by a lot of these guys and jumped off the porch and really took off and was a force to be had in Phoenix for a while, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's my ego speaking. Yeah, I mean, sure.
Yeah, but I believe it. I've seen your artwork, and I know you're good. I know you're good at it. And now that I'm really, because of you, some other nice friends have educated me on all of this. I can understand. I actually went out and tagged a little thing that, next to Ronnie's one of the memorials done for him. And I can see the excitement of it, especially if you're artistic. I'm really artistic. I love art and I love to create. And I kind of got into it. The video shows it. And I remember Essay and who was with him? Somebody else. I can't remember. Anyway, they were with us, and it was Volar, and they were like, "Wow, you can do this." I'm like, I know I could really get into it, and I can see the draw to it. If for all the other things that go with it, like the excitement of it and the like you called it a little while ago, a cat and mouse game between the cops and you, and I can see the excitement of that and how teenagers could really get off on it. And then now you become an adult and you still enjoy doing it. You just don't like going to jail. So you're a little more careful. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, you have all these obstacles in our way. You got police, gangs, rivals, and, civilians and stuff. And that's what made graffiti exhilarating.
Right.
I mean, the first time, the first time you go through the whole process of getting an illegal spot, either you jump a wall or, jump a fence or climb this building like some makeshift ninja or something, and you do all this work just to shimmy out on a 6-inch ledge and paint your name on a roof or something. It's the very next day where you drive by in the daytime and you get to get your picture, but the first time you drive by and you see your name out there for everyone to see, that's the first moment that you get hooked on it. And like the feeling that you get from it is undescribable. And that's like the first moment that you really get like this addiction for graffiti.
I could see it's like an addiction. I really can. I can see it's no different than any addictions that I have. I mean, I'll go jump over anything to get me a Coke Zero every single morning, I'm just teasing, but no, I can see that. I can see that. And if you have addictive personality, which, I think most of you guys do that do it, you get the high off the thrill of it. I know a kid in my family that has broken so many bones in his body because when he's a teenager anyway, he doesn't do it anymore. He's a dad and kind of grew up and doesn't do that. But he got such a high off of those extreme sports, like jumping off, mountains on a snowboard that fall, 50 feet, and
right.
Can't understand why he's in the hospital. He broke his arm or his clavicle or whatever, and it happened to him all the time. And it was the high that he got from the thrill of it. And
right. Yeah. And I can definitely see Blake doing that,
Yeah. He's going to love that we're on.
shout out to Blake. He's a good dude. I love him.
When he was a teenager, man, he loved that kind of stuff. He was just skateboarding, snowboarding. He just would take extra chances more than, Jimmy's his age and they were cousins, and Jimmy was a more cautious kind of guy. He kind of old fashioned and didn't do that kind of stuff. But Blake really loved that, and Ronnie was like that. He was on the edge and liked to do edgy stuff, and I can see why. I mean, when I was a teenager, I did different kinds of things, but I did them too, and I think it's just it's too bad to me that the talent that goes with you guys, there's so much talent. It's just too bad to me that you get caught up in a legal system that does nothing to help teenagers. Nothing for it to help teenagers or their families or to deal with whatever the real issue is, and I know it's not going to get stopped and it's going to be there forever. I mean, I've never really studied the history of graffiti, but I know it goes back and different races have different types of traditions to it. I know, and I've always wanted to study it and see if there was any kind of documentaries on TV or anything about it, because it's
yeah,
quite fascinating.
I can definitely send you a couple. There's
do it. I'd love to watch them.
There's so I mean it really dates back to like the early 70s.
So it doesn't go beyond that,
well, I mean, not graffiti as we know it. I mean, sure, there's graffiti that dates back to the caveman era, but the Egyptians and all kinds of people used to do what's considered graffiti, but what we consider graffiti today, it really dates back to like the early 70s. The media portrays a guy named Taki 183 as the guy starting it, but really it was this other dude named Cornbread out of Philadelphia. And he was just a kid that wanted to write his name everywhere, and that's what kind of started it. And there's documentaries on him. There's documentaries on the early scene in New York. New York's kind of always been like the mecca for graffiti,
right?
But I kind of feel like in 100 years from now, people are going to look back at graffiti as like this, this amazing wave of art that they should have paid attention to then, because, we go out there and we risk our life, we risk our freedom, we risk, jobs, cars, like everything, just to put our name and our art out there for no like monetary reasons. We're not getting paid to do it. We're just doing it just to do it. And I think that's, one of the purest forms of art that you can do. But yeah, I mean, I think I know in Phoenix, there's, when you go downtown and the art district and stuff, you can tell that there's more of a recognizing of it. A lot of companies and their buildings are hiring some of these guys to do, we know Volart gets a lot of work because he's really good at murals and that kind of stuff. And just, they're recognizing it and having them put, some big mural about their company on the side of the wall or stuff. So it's cool for me to see a channel for this. And it's cool for me too, now that I have a better appreciation for the art of it. When I travel a little bit and I hit Salt Lake City a lot, and I go to Vegas a lot. My son lives there, and I go to, I don't get into the streets of California too much, like down in LA. My son lives in somewhere where San Bernardino area, and I see it up there too. And it's funny, as we're driving by, sometimes Greg's driving and I get to look, and it's funny. I actually stop and take double looks at it and take pictures of it. And I sent you one that there was one in, I think I was in New Orleans. Yeah, New Orleans. And there was one that somebody had put on the back of a billboard, and it was first with a 1ST. Did you see that? I believe that was FST.
Oh, okay.
The F was backwards. It's a crew out of like the.
Oh, so you've heard of them before?
I've seen their stuff around on the internet and stuff.
It was huge. It took up the whole back of a billboard.
Yeah. And that's kind of like, that's the kind of the draw of it too, like I remember like you get spots like that. And I think like after seeing like the first like huge spot where, you risk life and limb for it and stuff like that. And, I think that's when I knew that this was going to be like a lifelong adventure for me, and it wasn't going to be some, some phase I'm going through or stuff like that. And,
Right.
and over the years, graffiti is definitely taking me to like some really high highs and some rock bottom lows. I've seen, amazing cities. I've been all over the country, different countries and stuff like that. Unbelievable views. I've met some awesome people from around the world.
How is it accepted in Europe and other countries?
Graffiti's everywhere. It doesn't matter where you go, but
Yeah, but I mean, in terms
there's certain
the average.
countries. There's certain countries that have a lot more of it than others. Especially like in the Europes and stuff like that. There's a lot of like small countries that got some like amazing people, like Germany, France, like Czech Republic, and Spain. There's just Italy. There's so many amazing, talented graffiti artists from every country around the world.
So you're like Irish. I know that's a big thing in Ireland. Have you been there?
I have not.
Oh, cool.
But
I want to go
eventually-
there. I'm Irish too. One of these
Right.
days, my thing.
Yeah, one of these days, me and my wife were talking about we want to go over there. She really wants to go. She was talking about wanting to move to like Norway or somewhere like that, just to get away from all the issues in America and stuff like that. And I'm just like, that'd be amazing. It looks absolutely beautiful. But have you looked at what their temperatures get let down to? Like, and so yeah,
That's what my husband keeps saying. We're moving to Utah. Have you looked at the temperatures today? Anyway.
But yeah, there's one thing that I remember, like, as a graffiti writer, there's like a specific view or this site that only a graffiti writer knows about. And, that's like being on top of a rooftop or a billboard or a freeway sign in the middle of the night. And you're just kind of like sitting there watching traffic go by, watching people walk around, and you're just up there like watching the whole world pass by as you're sitting up there doing graffiti. And like typically when I get up there, like I kind of always think to myself, like, no one else in the world right now is looking at what I'm looking at, and this is, it's one of the most beautiful things to me. But yeah, there's a lot of beautiful things about graffiti, and there's also, on the opposite side of things, there's a lot of bad things about graffiti too. I've spent time in jail. I've had to pay fines, had my door kicked in multiple times. I've lost girlfriends, lost friends, and gotten arrested with people. And I've always kind of like, you don't really know someone until you've been arrested with them, and you get to look at a witness statement section on an affidavit. That's when you really get to learn who that person is. Like, are they real like they say they are, and they don't snitch, or they can sit there and have this persona about they're so street and this and that, and then you get to read the witness statement, and they're singing like a bird, telling them it's all you, this and that, and you're just like, mother,
You're the best,
right? And that happens a lot in graffiti. A lot of times people, it's not as. Now it's it is publicized a lot. Usually people will, if someone snitches, I think that's a no-no. So usually people will put that word out to everybody, and they're kind of, sometimes it ruins someone's career, and sometimes it kind of just falls to the wayward, and they continue doing what they're doing. But
that's a code you don't mess with. I know that.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not as like crazily enforced as like prison politics,
No.
Yeah, in prison you get killed for snitching, but like graffiti, like you might just take an ass whooping, and you might have to change your name or something, or
you lose a lot of friends, that's for sure.
Right. And it's crazy because graffiti has like this weird way of making you like a real humble person and an egotistical maniac at the same time, which kind of sounds weird, but so graffiti is, I've always kind of generalized graffiti as like an ego sport, because it's all, it's not, you're not doing it for any political reasons or anything. Like, you're doing it for yourself and your friends and stuff like that, and to make your crew up and stuff like that. But really you're just running around trying to prove that you or your crew is the best in the city, and you guys are, no one can mess with you and stuff like that. And you start getting respect and you're making a name for yourself, and it all adds to the addiction of graffiti.
Right.
But like for me, like, like kind of now that I'm older and I've, been doing graffiti for, 25 plus years now, I use it more as a stress reliever. Like after a hard day at work, or me and my wife, we get in an argument or something like that, I like to go paint, and it just makes everything better for me. It helps me cool down, and graffiti has always kind of had my back in that sense. But yeah, like I was saying, like graffiti also, it has its downsides. You risk your freedom. Every night you go out, you risk your life. If you make one wrong step, standing on the top of a billboard, and you drop 40, 50 feet, you're not gonna make it.
Right.
You're standing in the middle of traffic, standing above traffic. Yeah, so you make one bad move and you can lose a lot of stuff, or you make one bad move with people, or you snitch and you can lose your entire reputation. There's other things too, like you can lose your job. If you get caught up and you end up spending the night in jail, you can lose your job. Your car can get impounded. There's a lot stacked up against you, and for some people, it's just too much, and those kind of people just aren't really cut out for graffiti and that lifestyle. And usually those people kind of fall to the wayside after the first time they get arrested, or they have some kind of tragedy in graffiti, as far as losing something, or just too much trauma for them or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
some might say that they got smart. Some might in this that are listening, or they. I mean, definitely, if they are gonna feel bad about themselves or whatever, that's the right thing to do, I guess. You don't want to get doing stuff if you're gonna get yourself in trouble, or like what you're saying is that personality shouldn't be doing it. Basically, is what you're saying. You can't hack it, then you got to get out, and that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah, and we're typically looked down upon. Like. Because you don't tell your grandma you run around doing graffiti, and I understand that not everyone sees graffiti the same way that I do. To civilians, we're vandalizing properties and we're making the area look like shit, and the property values are going down, and but in reality, it's like we go to those places to do graffiti in the first place because it's a crap neighborhood, or we usually pick areas either because it's going to run and it's going to last a while. Usually, in the ghetto areas, they do that, or it's a spot that's on blast for everyone to see, like the freeway or billboards or stuff like that. But, I think people are so used to being force fed like advertisements and commercials, that they're so used to it. Then they see us do it, and they think that it's like we're doing something wrong. But in reality, it's like, if I got to look at, 45 billboards for McDonald's on the way to work every morning, and I didn't ask to see that stuff. So why do I care if Joe Schmo down the road is forced to see my stuff? Like, I'm not, it's not hurting him. I'm not tagging on his house. We typically, we try to stay away from tagging on personal property. But
I can honestly say, and not that it doesn't happen, because it does. You see, you know that it does happen, where there's dumb young guys or something that go out and tag in the wrong places. But honestly, most of the time when I see it, it's in the heart of cities and alleyways and that kind of thing. I know you explained to me one time that the difference between crews and gangs, and the difference between crews that are selling drugs, and then and that's part of it, and there's all these different things, and I think that there's different standards, I guess is the word you'd say, between the different types of crews and the different type of artist. I think there's some that are disrespectful and put it in wrong places and that kind of thing. And you've told me that starts wars sometimes, doing stupid stuff like that. And so, But in general, I can honestly say in Phoenix in general, it's, most of it is down in the heart of the city and in places where a lot of the vendors and the people down there don't care, or it's alleyways. There's a lot of alleyways down in Phoenix that, the car parts place doesn't care that you're using the back of their fence or something like that, and I can see that in general, most taggers are pretty respectful that way, that they're not doing it in places, people's homes and churches and schools and that kind of thing.
Right. And I've been on usually the argument is like, what if someone tagged on yours? Well, I've been on that, that side of the fence. I've had my house tagged on before, or my outside wall tagged on before and stuff like that. And I'm kind of like, well, it's the name of the game, I guess,
Well, I'll tell you the first time that we've had experience with tagging, Ronnie I think he's probably about 15, 16, maybe. I don't even think he was 16, but he's about 15. And he, I'm not going to say who did it because I know who did it. I'm not going to say it. I love him to death now. But at the time he came to the door, Ronnie ran away from home, and we'd found him a few weeks later. And one of those times it was heartbreaking, and we brought him home, and somebody came to the door to see him, this guy, and his dad answers the door and he says, "No, Ronnie's not coming to the door. You're not going to see Ronnie for a while," and being the tough dad and loving dad that he was worried about Ronnie, and he just shut the door. And the next day, my brand new white Ford Taurus had FU scratched in the side, a whole big side of my car. And
oh wow,
yeah, I was pretty ticked about it. There's no way to prove that this kid did this, and so that's the other part of it, is that there was a mad teenager, now I look back on it and still made me mad. It wasn't right, but something was going on in these two boys' lives, and they made some mistakes, and so I just have a different outlook on it, and now when you're my good friend, and Andy's my good friend, Dare's my good friend, and you guys are like the heart of especially Andy, and Dare was really big part of the graffiti scene, and my son was so young and was under their wings, and back then I was mad. I was really mad, and now I just have a different type of appreciation for the art of it, and also open my eyes to there's more bigger problems going on than just them out there painting up the city. There's something going on in a kid's life that requires that type of high, or whatever you will call it, addiction to it, And
yeah, I mean, typically that's a no-no. Usually we stay away from people's cars.
Yeah, I 100% believe that.
Real serious offense.
Yeah, this kid was pissed, and he's now a good friend of mine. It's really funny. I've never approached him about him doing that, and I never will. It's no big deal anymore. But yeah, I drove around that car and Ronnie did too, for about 15 years with that FU.
I'm sure Ronnie got at him about it.
I'm sure he did too. I'm sure it didn't make him too happy. Yeah, it was pretty stupid. But yeah, so just to bring a side to it, that's all I was saying, is that there's a side to it as a parent and as a citizen, that I have been on the other end of the vandalism of it, and the heartache of watching my son get arrested over it, and him love it more than he loved his freedom. And it was just so hard, and so hard to understand, and so hard to reconcile in my brain, what it was all about, until I took the time. I still don't think it's the best thing for people to be doing, kids to be doing, but I think that I see it in a different light. Is that fair? Like, I see it.
Yeah.
I see the person, the individual, and not the little vandal anymore. Like I look at them and, they all have stories. I've talked to all of you. Everyone that I've ever been approached by for Ronnie, I've heard their whole story. I love talking to them. And I will say this, I've said it a million times. They're just people, just like any other families. They all want the best for their children. They want, I just don't believe in labels anymore. I like to look at the whole picture. So.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, like once you had said that Ronnie loved graffiti more than his freedom, and it's like once you get over the fear of going to jail, and you realize that it's not as bad as the movies and the shows make it seem like it's really. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a shitty place to be, and you don't ever want to be there. But like for graffiti, you're not going to be doing prison time for graffiti. I mean, there's a few people that have, but usually, you're there overnight. You see the judge in the morning, unless you you get caught on a weekend or something like that, then you gotta wait till Monday morning or whatever. But overnight in Fourth Avenue is not the world. It's not world ending or anything.
Ronnie had, his time in jail was not anything to do with graffiti 99.9% of the time. So,
right.
I can honestly say that it's mostly marijuana.
But yeah, once you get over that fear, like graffiti becomes like this instinctual thing, like, and you really like civilians start recognizing it once you drive with us. We have like this unmistakable, like kind of like machine-like thing we do when we're driving. We're constantly looking around. I'm looking at, I'm looking at the top of the roof. I'm looking at the back of the billboard. I'm looking at down the street in the alley. I'm looking at, the back of the freeway signs. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at that. And I think like the first time my wife Michelle was driving with me, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, there's that spot that I hit like 2 weeks ago, and I'm just looking to make sure it's still there. This and that." And so it's kind of like it's a little bit different, and people in our lives eventually get used to it for the most part, and sometimes people don't. I've been lucky. That I've been extremely lucky to find my beautiful wife Michelle. She's an amazing woman, and she puts up with my shit, which is rare. And
she does.
And it's a rare thing to find in a woman in general, especially as a graffiti artist. Usually, we have a hard time keeping and holding relationships because at some point in time, it comes to a fork in the road where it's like, the Taylor Graffiti or me. I'm like, well, I told you since, I told Michelle, since the jump, like, don't ever make me pick between graffiti and you, because, just pack your bags. If you plan on saying that, have your bags packed, because I mean, I love you to death, but that's who I am. That's what I'm going to do. And if you love me, you wouldn't make me choose differently, but and she never has. And I mean, it's not to say that I haven't, I'm no way, shape, or form perfect. I've been a complete ass to her, and she's still by my side, which I, thank a higher power every day for that, because, any other woman in her shoes would have left me ages ago. And, and she's generally happy when I can go paint, which is also rare to find too, because it's graffiti usually puts a stress on relationships, but she knows that that's how I cool off, and I blow my steam and stuff like that. And she's happy that I can do something that I'm interested in, because it's either I work nonstop and stuff like that. So when I get a chance to go out and paint, I'm generally happier. I'm not all pent up and stuff like that. And yeah, usually, when I'm out in the middle of the night or something like that, I always try to send her like a text message saying like, "Hey, I'm doing all right, or I'm safe," or, and stuff like that. And she really, she really appreciates that. And I've never had to text her like, "Hey, I'm about to go to jail," but I mean, she knows it's always a possibility too. But it's just overnight, so I'll see you in the morning or something like that. But, and especially when we're driving too, I could see the frustration sometimes in her because she's trying to talk to me and I'm, looking at the back of a freeway sign and I'm like, well, what? Like, what'd you say? Like, and she knows I'm looking at graffiti and, I understand that can be really frustrating and stuff like that. Or anytime we go to a restaurant, I have to go to the bathroom because I got to go look in the bathroom and look at the scribes and the tags and stuff like that. When we're having issues with other crews, she worries a lot because she knows that I tend to make dumb decisions very instantly. And, if I have a problem with someone, I'm the first person to try to fight or have confrontation and stuff like that. And that's kind of when that switches on. We could be out on a date having a perfectly good time and I can completely ruin everything by seeing someone I don't like. And she's put up with so much crap because of graffiti and who I am. But, like I told her since the beginning, graffiti is my passion, and she was okay with it, and she knew that that came with me, and it wasn't some phase or anything that will ever go away. And she told me she was ready to die, and has kept that word ever since. Even when I'm having a bad day or stressed out, she tells me, if you don't go paint, I swear I'm gonna snap and we're gonna have a problem. And sometimes I just take that as a cue. It's like, yeah, you're probably right. I should go paint, and, I'm just really grateful to have someone as amazing as her.
That's cool. It kind of reminds me of, you've told me before relationships are really hard for graffiti artists. And Ronnie had the same girl his whole adult life. They were off and on and fought all the time, and it's probably over graffiti and different things. But I have to give a shout out to Una because she was really Ronnie's love of his life. And
Una definitely hated us.
Who did?
Una.
Yeah.
I mean, I became good friends with her, and once you kind of get past that outer shell of hers.
She's
an amazing person, but. Yeah, like there's no filter on that woman at all, and we'll be at
she'd let Ronnie have it all the time, and I can honestly say, like, I used to be amazed because nobody talked to Ronnie like that. Sometimes I'd be like, "How are you getting away with that?" And she says, "What do you mean?" He listens to everything you say, and I'm like, "Since when?" Like, it was just the funniest thing because she always respected me that I had a way with Ronnie, and I was like, I don't have any ways with Ronnie. You do. Like, I saw her chew him out, and they'd get together and get apart and get together. They've known each other since high school, and there's a few girlfriends that Ronnie had through the years, but nothing like Una. Like, she was the love of his life, and she just had to put up, she had to put up with a lot. And I know he did with her too. I can be honest about that, but that's true in any relationship. But it is hard. It's hard to have relationships when you have these things like graffiti going on. But
yeah, she was definitely
Michelle's awesome. I met Michelle. She blows me away because she's got these 3 sons and that's her whole life is her kids, and she does, it doesn't seem to faze her at all, this stuff. So,
sometimes it does, but
I don't get to see that part.
Right. Mm-hmm. Usually it's when I'm being chewed out or when I've done something wrong, which happens all the time because I've got my plenty of stories of me being a jackass and things that she should have left me for, but she loves me and I'm grateful every day. And when you mentioned about Una, she would chew him out. It was funny because she didn't care who it was. Like one time Ronnie brought her to an EMT meeting and was at my house, and we're standing around and catching tags and we're doing just normal graffiti stuff. And we have these friends from out of town and they're over at my house. They're these dudes from LA that brought in I think it was Dism and Gray were at my house at the time. And she was just like, "What are you guys doing? You guys look so stupid." And I'm just like, I'm like, "What?"
Do you know who you're talking to?
Yeah, I'm like, "Are you serious?" And she didn't give a rat's ass
She
like
does
who it
not.
was, and she'll just give it to you. And she's like, "You guys look stupid. Like you guys are 30-something-year-old, and you're acting like a child doing graffiti right now. Like you guys are freaking losers." And we kind of all just kind of shrugged it off and like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, whatever. Like, yeah, she's got a point.
That's the thing for Una is that she really believed that too. It really hurt. It hurt her a lot that Ronnie would do this stuff and get arrested, and she'd wait for him, and just amazing kind of love that she had for him, and she hated graffiti. I will tell you that we talked a lot about it because and drugs, of course, bigger than graffiti, but she just was always like, why the heck do they do this? It's like they're 30 years old. She'd chew him out. You're 35 years old and you're doing this. And I don't understand, and he would just laugh. But he did try, he tried many times to stop doing things that hurt her. But yeah, it just, when you were just talking about how it's hard to have relationships and it's hard on relationships, I just watched those two, and a lot of happiness and a lot of pain. And a lot of it was involved in graffiti, a lot drugs too. I mean, drugs was the biggest part of it, but yeah. Una had it, I think in her heart, she had it right. She wanted the right thing, and it's hard for her to love. It's hard to love somebody that doesn't go along with your plans, kind of hard. So I always give her credit for loving my son as much as she did.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, she's an absolutely amazing person. And Michelle was really, is really good friends with her. It's been a while since we've been able to see her, but there's something about being in a relationship with someone that does graffiti. Like there's something that you can understand. That whether it's that fear of them being out every night or getting a call that they're in jail or dead or this or that, and they kind of, like you kind of stick to those other people that know that same fear and stuff like that. And so Michelle's, she's made a lot of friends with the wives and girlfriends of other people, of other friends that do graffiti as well, and and those relationships kind of, they have like a strong bond to it.
Mm-hmm. I can only imagine sort of like military wives stick together because you can't understand, you can't understand what their fears are when their guys are out deployed somewhere or something. So yeah, I can see that, helping each other, supporting one another. So yeah, that's the life of graffiti and the graffiti artist. I think our purpose for this, I think, is to sort of educate, also tell a little bit about you. That was the main purpose. So we know where you're coming from, and our goals together is going to evolve here a little bit more on supporting the fight on opioid addictions, and because that's a big factor in a lot of these kids on the streets and stuff. And so we are wanting to like show how different we are, and that we are good friends, and I love Jerk and I know he loves me, but we're so opposite. We're not going to always agree on some of this, but we can try to see where each other are coming. And I think the world needs a little bit more of that. So we're trying to show an example of how you can come from two different worlds, understand each other, get along, don't have to agree, don't have to understand, but maybe try a little bit harder to understand.
Right. Yeah. And if, for example, if any of our viewers are trying to understand the point of view of someone that does graffiti or a drug addict or something like that, like, people, please reach out. You can reach out to us on our Instagram at whenworldscollide.podcast, and ask the question. If it's geared towards me, I will gladly answer and have a conversation about, anything. I'm an open book. And I think bringing awareness to a lot of the stuff that we talk about is very important, and kind of just educating people in general.
yeah, that's what we want to do. We're going to probably evolve here as we get better and bring on more guests that are more expertise at things that we may not understand, and they can give a better story. We can delve into a lot of the things that that ail the world today and show how we can do it from two different perspectives and get somewhere with it, maybe.
Right. Well, before I end this episode, do you have any last statements, questions, or anything?
No, just challenge everybody to have a Father's Day's coming up, and maybe reach out to your dads and give them a love and let them know they're appreciated. I think relationships with fathers are sometimes difficult because men are more complex in their emotions and that kind of thing, I think. But yeah, just reach out to your dads, love them, give them. You haven't seen them in a while, maybe it's a good time to reach out and love the fathers of the world.
Right. Or if you come from a single parent household,
Yeah.
let your mom know that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because there's a lot of moms out there that had to take that role. Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
that's true.
Well, this has been another episode of When Worlds Collide. You can reach us at whenworldscollide.podcast on Instagram. Like I said before, any questions or anything like that, just don't feel free to reach out, because we're open books and we definitely want to hear the feedback. Other than that, thank you guys for listening. It's been another episode. Later.
Bye.